Chapter 271 to 273. Nobody would expect to be surprised by a stranger talking to them. On the moon. Hearing the voice, the girls instantly turned around, ready for a fight, and then Konan furrowed her eyebrows in astonishment. "Yuriko, what are you doing here?" "Hello, Konan. I work here," Yuriko answered with a small, mischievous smile before she turned towards Rei. "Hi, boss. I see you finally decided to show them around," she asked. Needless to say, even Mei was completely surprised by this turn of events. She helped Rei the most with his projects, yet she had no clue Yuriko was already on the moon, doing something for him. The women instantly turned towards Rei, in their eyes a profound question of why Yuriko was the first one to know. As far as they knew, Yuriko was just a subordinate and a ninja of the village hidden on the other side. Somehow, she being the first to know about such an important project of Rei's was a low blow to their feelings as women. Naturally, Rei had no clue about this at that moment, and as such, he simply shrugged and indifferently replied, "I needed someone capable of using senjutsu, and there was only Tsunade and Yuriko available. But Tsunade was far too busy to involve her, so Yuriko it was," he said, causing Yuriko to pout. He had no idea what kind of disaster his carefree reply just saved him from. "Why would you need a senjutsu user?" Tsunade curiously asked. Rei grinned and pointed at the necklace with 2 seals on her neck he gave her before they teleported. "These seals are supposed to provide oxygen and ensure you will not be crushed from inside out due to vacuum." All 4 of his women except Konan widened their eyes when they heard what could have happened to them. They knew what a vacuum was. It was important for high-ranked ninjas to know, because the 2 pinnacles of the wind manipulation were invisible wind blades. People who chose this way focused on density and compression, and then there was vacuum jutsu, which focused on getting air out of certain spots, creating a vacuum and then weaponizing it. That said, they never thought about what is outside of elemental nations, much less what is outside their planet, so neither really put many thoughts into the possibility of a natural vacuum being in space. Natural vacuum? Such a term was honestly laughable. Knowing how devastating vacuum jutsu were, the girls could only wryly grimace at the thought of an airless state like that existing naturally. "So, without this," Tsunade patted the pendant on her neck, "we would instantly go squelch?" she asked in trepidation. Rei grinned and wordlessly pointed at Yuriko, more precisely, her neck area that had no necklace. She actually wore a quite loose shirt and shorts. Unless the seals were tattooed into the part of her skin covered by her clothes, which was a ridiculous idea because the seals were not useful enough to make them permanent and hook them on her chakra system as was necessary with tattooed seals or drawn directly on her clothes, which was unreliable as heck when it comes to seals that have to function 24/7. Then, Yuriko now stood in a vacuum without any protection and was just fine. While Tsunade researched senjutsu itself, I was more interested in nature energy, Rei started explaining. He was not about to tell them his idea came from what he saw in anime during his last life, where Naruto without any protection could survive on the moon. That would be ridiculous. Rei naturally had a good excuse for his knowledge. "I found out nature energy can strengthen the human body not unlike what it does to the chakra beasts. That led me to a small realization." Rei meaningfully looked at his girls. "We are still wary of the vacuum jutsu because they are the strongest crushing force our world knows. There is no jutsu as devastating as these, which is the reason why the wind was dubbed the offensive element. The only good thing about the vacuum jutsu is their small area of effect. Yet, how do we know it would work on us when we always evade these out of a healthy dose of respectful fear? You aren't saying you did something as crazy as trying out what would happen to you if a vacuum jutsu hit you, are you?" Konan unamusedly asked, inwardly feeling a bad premonition telling her she was most likely correct. Rei turned towards Konan and sheepishly laughed while rubbing the back of his head. "Well, yeah." "Damn it, Rei!" Conan sighed and started to rub the bridge of her nose. Seeing that his other wives also started to narrow their eyes at him because he did something stupid, again, Ray decided to continue with his explanation and hoped they would just forget about the matter. I absorbed nature energy into myself and use it to directly strengthen my body for decades now. Honestly, the vacuum does nothing to me, Ray said and gestured that he did not wear the necklace with the protective seals either. Yet, there are some attacks that can do me harm. Ray glanced at Conan and Tsunade, despite the force behind them being weaker than what vacuum can exert. After that realization, I found out that nature energy works as a kind of a counterforce against vacuum, and senjutsu users use nature energy too, hence... He gestured at Yuriko, who still stood in her initial spot. Oh, May nodded and took the necklace off, stuffing it into her pocket. Then we should be fine, no? We have our pets after all. Ah, Conan blinked. So that's what you are trying to tell us. She understood. We might not be senjutsu users, but thanks to our biju that were made thanks to the nature energy in your dimension, we should be fine. Yeah, Ray sighed. Then again, you are lucky it also makes you capable of surviving without oxygen, May. I really did not expect you to just yank the protective necklace off your neck. He shook his head before mumbling, and they call me reckless. So, should we proceed to the base? Yuriko interjected. As amusing as watching the interaction between Ray and his wives was, she still had some work to do. Base? Pakura turned towards her. Ray ordered you to make a base here? She looked around the barren, rocky terrain without anything interesting in it, not understanding why exactly they should care about the moon. It was a good place for a bolt hole that nobody could find, but other than that, she thought it was a waste of resources. Of course. Ray put his hands on his hips in a self-important manner. We already have Uzushio and the village on the other side under our rule. Why not add a village on the other side of the moon there, too? It might seem like nothing special, but the moon has a lot of metal deposits. Metals that may or may not be even stronger than chakra metal. Now we are talking. Ringo grinned, her eyes sparkling at the thought of metal stronger than chakra metal. The opinion about the new base on the other side of the moon quickly shifted to being a favorable one once Ray explained why exactly he chose the moon. Alas, Conan was not easy to fool. Plus, there should be Kaguya Otsutsuki sealed inside of this ball of rock. Isn't that right, Ray? She smirked, giving him a knowing look. Are you perhaps trying to get a new girl? Ray just shrugged, not expecting to be able to hide Kaguya's existence. After all, he did tell them about her. Then again, that doesn't really depend on me now, does it? Ray and his wives followed Yuriko to the base. The teleportation point was a bit away from the actual base, while the needed seal was buried deep in the rocky ground, configured to teleport people above the ground. It was all calculated to the extreme by Ray as a safety measure. This way, even if the base was discovered and destroyed by the guy who was supposedly living on the moon, the one Ray had no idea about since he didn't put much thought into the final movie of the Naruto series, there was still a chance the teleportation seal would not be discovered. After all, where would the guy learn sealing arts on the moon? As far as Ray knew, the area had quite the lack of teaching material going on. The group finally arrived, and the girls could only stare at the houses made of hardened snow, only then realizing the climate was cold enough to sustain it. This is actually amazing. How come it is so strong? Ringo asked, knocking on the icy wall with quite a bit of her strength, surprised that it was as hard as the seal-enhanced stone walls the village on the other side had. It's specially molded with my senjutsu-enhanced chakra. You guys are not the only ones who experiment with their abilities, you know. Yuriko pipped in when she saw the women look at the structures she was building in the recent months. As for the size, Ray wanted me to make a small city. You know, prepare the place for new occupants and stuff. She shrugged. I guess Ray really wants to make another town here, huh? Pakura muttered to herself in disbelief. still not understanding what good it would make. Anything that needed secrecy could be done in the village on the other side. There was no need for an additional village away from their planet. Rei approached her and hugged her with one arm. Don't forget there is still the Otsutsuki clan. If I want to make a sealing barrier around the planet so they won't be able to find it, I can only do it from here. That's why it is so important that buildings are made here. A lot of work is awaiting me here. Ah, Pakura nodded, a bit satisfied with that explanation. She was actually planning to remake Tsunagakure into a perfect fortress for her family in case something bad happened. That was the entire point of strengthening its forces. The village was perfect for that. It was deep in the desert in a hard-to-invade country and full of people who lived in this inhospitable land and knew how to ambush any idiot who dared to enter their territory. Ninja villages were not made to sustain lengthy sieges. Such a thing was impossible with superpowered ninjas playing the role of soldiers. Ninjas were not trained to fight in siege battles either. The villages were, however, all located in places that, for their native forces, were easy to defend. The general idea was to not allow enemies to get close to the village, and since the establishment of the first hidden village, a situation where a large force of ninjas managed to get to an enemy ninja village simply did not happen. The ninjas' way of the fight was designed to prevent such a thing, to discover approaching enemies and eliminate them before they got to the village. Honestly, there really was no better placement than the moon for a hidden village, since their forces were already used to teleporting all over the continent anyway. You are finally starting to worry about the Otsutsuki clan? Conan asked. I thought we had time before they became a problem. We do, but that doesn't mean the solution is going to be easy. Fighting them head-on is not on the table. I have no idea about their forces, but they are supposed to be powerful. I won't risk any of you because of some misplaced pride. If I can solve the situation by hiding our planet with seals, then that would be enough for the time being. Even if we wanted to fight them directly, first of all, we need time. 6 people are not an army. Hence, the elemental nations have to be united, Conan mused. Is that why you are letting Akatsuki do whatever they want? Partly, I do hope to use them as a bogeyman later on. I still do not know what to do about them, but their goal is perfect as far as a reason for the hidden villages to stand together goes. If we did not intervene, I can imagine a future where the villages would just ignore them while they hunted the Jinchuriki, only to get a harsh reminder when just 1 or 2 of them remained. After all, nobody would want a group of S-class criminals to get their hands on all 9 Biju. The problem is, the 1, 2, and 3-tailed Jinchuriki are affiliated with us. Conan summed up what made Rei indecisive. Yeah, we do not really need Akatsuki anymore, but I just don't know. If I try to make Kirigakure, Tsunagakure, and Konoha into one strong block and have them sign an alliance, Iwagakure and Kumogakure will instantly join together. It wouldn't even matter if they hate each other. They would do it simply because of self-preservation. And that is a reason that can make their treaty more ironclad than anything else. We don't really need them. They are lagging behind Konoha, Kiri, and Suna anyway. Give it 5 years, and they will be useless compared to our 3 villages. Still, conflict at home turf is going to be a problem no matter how developed they are. I just need more time to think about how to approach that problem. Frankly, the direction of my plans depends a lot on Kaguya and her reply to my offer. Conan nodded, deciding she heard enough. Seeing that the free-for-all information fest was over, the 4 discreetly listening women also pretended nothing was out of the ordinary. Yet, in the heads of Tsunade, Pakura, and Ringo, possible treaties between their villages started to form in a way that would benefit all of them. As for May, she just enjoyed the fabulous view. Walking through the street full of structures made out of clear blue, icy-like snow felt otherworldly to the group. The constructs standing there were more like ice sculptures than buildings. It was clear that Yuriko put a lot of thought and effort into it. At long last, the group led by Yuriko finally arrived in front of a palace-like light blue building that stood in the middle of the newly sculpted town. Even Rei was baffled at the enormous size of that building. It was even bigger than his mansion in the other-sided village, or the one in his dimension. The group looked at Yuriko, who looked a bit sheepish due to their gazes. "Well, I might have gotten a bit carried away during the work," she shrugged. "Right." Ray nodded. To be honest, he was just glad Yuriko found something that made her happy. Sure, after Conan saved her from the snow village, the woman looked and acted fine, but it was obvious she needed a long rehabilitation. And she did get it. Yet, it wasn't all that helpful. Another reason why Ray chose Yuriko instead of Tsunade was that he wanted to get her to a place without people where she could simply be herself. Looks like it helped, if only slightly. Ray thought in self-satisfaction. The group sat around a table in Ray's new moon palace. "Could you repeat it? I think I must have misheard you. For a moment, I got the impression you said the moon is ready to go kaboom at any moment." Ray looked intently at Yuriko, who sheepishly smiled. "Yeah, about that," she shrugged. "I just investigated the strange chakra saturation you felt deep under the surface as you told me. It was more time-consuming than hard to find out what it is supposed to do. The idea is simple, and many ninjas use it even nowadays on a smaller scale when they are hired for a demolition mission. The strange chakra is strategically located in weak spots of the planet, and upon activation, it will most likely act like an overpowered exploding tag, creating a lot of cracks in the foundation of the planet, making it crumble on itself. And the gravitation will do the rest." Conan nodded. "Damn, that's so cool. How come I did not come up with that idea?" May quipped. "Maybe because that's too complex for you?" Ringo snorted with a small grin forming on her lips. "So the moon is basically a floating meteor shower just waiting to happen." Ray summed up, inwardly groaning. "If it's not one thing, then it's another. Don't I have enough problems with villains on my home planet? Now I have to pay attention to some dickhead on the moon who can make it rain in pieces on my villages? This is such bullshit," Ray thought. He knew there was some idiot descended from Hamura living on the moon and that he would cause trouble in the far future after the Fourth Ninja War. That, however, was the extent of his memory when it came to Naruto's last movie. Finding out the dude is able to use the moon as his weapon was a bit heavier revelation than he expected. "Maybe you could let me use one of my planet-destroying jutsu now?" May excitedly asked, finally getting an opportunity to be destructive and helpful. Unfortunately for her, Conan's pointed looks quickly told her that no, this was not her time to shine. In fact, they looked at her as if she just said something retarded. As for Ray, he found it funny enough to good-naturedly chuckle at May's proposition. Reaching out, he affectionately rubbed her head before saying, "If destroying the moon was an option, then I would have no qualms about it. Unfortunately, the moon is incredibly important, May." "Is it?" May pouted. "Didn't we go through what the moon causes to occur on our planet during our lessons when you were still Jainin?" Conan asked with an edge in her tone, miffed that May didn't remember. "Your jutsu would not work anyway," Ray interjected. "The moon produces far too little nature energy for the effect of your planet-destroying jutsu to spread. All of them work by abusing the chain reaction and the endless supply of nature energy to spread destructive force. That would not work here. The nature energy barely penetrates the surface, so your jutsu would not have enough fuel." Ray suddenly stopped talking and his eyebrows furrowed. After a while, he finally exclaimed in realization, "Son of a bitch!" Tsunade blinked while tilting her head. She understood nature energy the most after Ray. Now that she thought about it, considering the moon produced it too, calling it nature energy might be a bit wrong too, but anyway, thinking about what was just said, she couldn't help but widen her eyes. The moon-crumbling jutsu under the surface on the moon works on the same basis as May's jutsus, doesn't it? Ray mutely nodded. There was no way to destroy a planet with a single jutsu. If the dude on the moon could do that, there would be no need for blowing up the moon. Coming down on the Earth and directly destroying it would have been enough. If somebody other than May found out there is nature energy on the moon and then realized a way to use that energy in a chain reaction. Hamura, you son of a bitch! Rei inwardly cursed. He didn't need to remember the last Naruto movie to realize who was responsible. There was only one guy who lived on the moon and almost reached the level of the Sage of the Six Paths. Wait, bitch! Rei tilted his head as an idea suddenly struck him. He didn't, he whispered, looking at Tsunade. What? She asked. The moon is just a big ball of rock. Even if it could produce the energy we know as nature energy, would it be enough for such a big-scale jutsu? I doubt our planet produces enough of the said energy to completely and instantly crumble itself from inside out. Continuously destroying it should be possible. Rei looked at Mei. It would take a few months even for Mei's jutsus, but it could happen. But instantly? I don't think our planet has enough energy for that. Plus, every philosophy on our planet regarding that energy is saying it is the energy of life and comes from nature itself. Rei started. Which may be wrong. Tsunade reminded, the moon does not have nature, not to mention much life, and yet it is producing nature energy. That should be enough to disprove these philosophies, no? You are looking at the problem from the perspective of a researcher, Tsunade. Konan pipped in. In that case, why do these philosophies work for people trying to master senjutsu on our planet? If the energy had nothing to do with life or nature, then the senjutsu masters must be misunderstanding the whole thing and using a flawed concept, yet it clearly works for them. Either the concept is right, or it is close enough to the truth to work while being entirely different. My senjutsu has a snow attribute in it. Would that even be possible without nature energy being connected to, well, nature? Yuriko asked. That was when Mei leaned closer to Ringo and whispered, do you have any clue what they are talking about? Ringo looked at the younger redhead and knitted her eyebrows. No, just let them. They will get tired eventually. She shrugged. The debate about nature energy and the whole concept around it continued for a few more minutes. It was quite important. After all, if they understood what it was, then they could find a better way to use it and improve themselves, no? It doesn't really matter, Rei suddenly exclaimed, stopping the entire discussion. The important thing is, why is a dead planet like the moon producing enough energy to do what would be impossible on our planet? He swept the women around the table with his gaze, a knowing grin on his face, as he had an inkling what exactly was powering up the entire thing. There must be a different source of the energy, no?